you're our host this evening. Okay. Very good.
All right, let's call the meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee to order for Wednesday, August 24th. And we have minutes.
And I reviewed the minutes, so I will make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 10th, 2022.
Okay. There he is.
Hello.
Okay. Did you get a chance to review the minutes?
I did.
Commissioner Cuttergrove?
I did.
Any
Yeah,
exceptions?
I sent those. I sent my changes in.
You did?
I did. I think they were updated.
We
I
received
sent
your,
them to Meredith,
yes.
so I can verbally go over those if you need me
If
to.
you would like to,
Yeah, I'll
I
rescind
recommend
my
you verbally go
second
over.
and
So changes to the minutes. First of all, hi. The typo on my name. Second, we missed the election of our new chairperson from the minutes. Third, and all this is in writing, so Meredith has it. There was a Chair Crandall opened the public comments. No, it was Chair Camp. Those are the three.
Okay. And
So
those
was-
did not get incorporated, it seems. And
So we had draft minutes, and Commissioner Cosgrove had some changes to them. He sent them to staff. I have a version of those minutes with those changes made. However, what you just did is the way it should be done.
Okay.
Sending them ahead of time, we can put together a draft, but it doesn't actually
Sure.
we still need to read it into the record what
Okay.
the changes were. What I would like to say is that the names, those are self-explanatory, but the change that you requested about the
Election of the chair, yeah.
what the minutes would reflect would be that item number 1 in the meeting is first order of business, and under that it would say Chair Crandall motion for committee member Camp to take over as chair, and motion for committee member Cosgrove to take over as vice chair. Both motions were seconded, and the motions passed 3-0. Chair Camp opened the meeting.
Perfect.
Okay,
That's
good.
perfect.
So if
Perfect.
that works. then-
Yeah, so I can move approval of the minutes with those amendments.
And that's a
consider that a motion, and I'll second
Yeah.
the motion.
okay. Roll call vote. Commissioner Crandall?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Cosgrove is also an aye, and Commissioner Camp is an aye. But I don't have that to sign, right? The
That'll be
revised
next-
one?
next
That'll be
week.
I'll
at
get
the
that
next
next week. Okay. So I'll leave this with you. And with that, we can move to our single agenda item, I think, for this evening.
Yes.
And I think the best way to start would be for you maybe to quickly, whoever wants to present, or Jennifer, maybe quickly go over the changes from last week's, or last time we got together.
Yep, correct.
I think we're pretty clear on those, but just so that we can
Absolutely.
get those from you.
Sure.
So staff will scroll to those elevations, and if any member of the project team wants to go over those.
I'll go ahead and do that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
Kevin will, yeah.
Just hectic day so far.
Perfect. So probably can go to the next one. Yeah. So yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So what we did again, we wanted to show the before and afters from the previous meeting to this meeting, and how we approached the changing of the elevations. Real quick, my name's Kevin Bukta. I'm with TCA Design Director. I don't believe we met last time.
I'm new.
Okay, fantastic. Good to meet you. So, you know, the comments that were made last time, there wasn't a lot of movement in the architecture. There wasn't a lot of in and out. There wasn't a lot of variation. We wanted to see exceptional architecture. You know, it can be more Santa Barbara style architecture. I wanted to see some massing drops and breaks in the building. So, you know, we took a step back, looked at what we thought was wrong with the elevations or could be changed and made better. And looking at this elevation, we concluded, you know, there's too much symmetrical nature about it. It felt very institutional in a way. And so we took a step back, looked at how we could create some variation along the mass, make it more residential. And so we looked at incorporating some flat roof elements. We looked at incorporating some different massing breaks. So we have a 3-bay massing break on the left-hand side there, yes, with a 2-story covered deck on that element. And then on the right-hand side, we dropped the plate and then also added a cantilever deck and then a 1-story deck element out there. To the right of that, we talked about this tower element. I think in some previous schemes we had a tower at the gateway to that paseo, and we took that off on the last one, as you can see. But we felt, you know what, that added some interest there. It added a focal point, and so we thought about, let's bring that back. But how can we incorporate it more into the architecture so it's not just a just this lone tower? And so we added this shed element off the side. Very casual forms. That's the approach we took with it. Very casual nature of the architecture, but a lot of in and out, some up and down. We talked about moving the eye up and down across the elevation, and so adding band lines to the facade, and then also creating some variation with the fenestration on the building. Larger windows, smaller windows where we can afford it. And just creating a general sense of variation across the elevation. If you look at the upper one, windows and the symmetrical nature about it, and you look at the lower one, you'll see that there was quite a bit of change from the two elevations. So go ahead.
No, I was just saying, okay.
Okay. If we want to move on to the next one, again, we took the same approach. Let's move down to, I think this one we added some stuff, but we added some banding on it. There wasn't a lot of room for some movement located next to that the sidewalk, but we did lower we moved a bedroom actually out of that unit and lowered it down to create some massing difference there. But along this edge, I think we did some more changes that played with, again, the roof line. We went to some flat roof elements. We incorporated some more decks along this edge, and you can see we gathered some elements to create a little bit more variation in the 2-bay next to 3-bay, and then some of this shed roof elements where the stairs are dropping, the roof line even more there. So we really made an effort to change what we had previously and create some variation along these edges. Along the back sides, these we brought some banding in. I think to create activity on every single facade, we really wanted to try to create some calmness at some of these edges, and turning it, we didn't feel like adding a tower or some sort of other device on these edges really made any sense. But we did add some band lines to the facade. We added some 2-story glazing elements with some tile in the spandrel area, and just added a little bit more variation to these edges. We felt these being not on the back side necessarily, but on a less visible side of our building from the public edge, but we still we addressed these edges as well. And then these are just some of our perspectives to give you a better idea of what's happening with the elevations. You can see inside those spandrel elements on those 2-story glass, we've added some articulation, whether it's a print or some sort of a styrofoam fill piece.
Would you say that these renderings also illustrate the depth of the window
Yes.
offset?
Yes. Thank you for bringing
Thank
that
you,
up.
Jennifer.
We did add some depth to our windows, which was asked for last time as well. Same here, we created some cantilevered elements, created some more interest, some human scale. And I think one element I did want to address. We have not elevated these paseos yet. We've elevated the exterior of our buildings, and as well as the courtyards. We have not elevated yet. But I think what we will want to do once we start elevating these is creating some of those pop-outs where the decks and overhead canopies or cantilever decks create some interest. Because I think it was your comment last week that we want to be careful not to make flat facades, especially down these paseos. We could have just faked it in and put in, some of those pop-outs just to show some of that. I didn't want to, I did not want to do that for this round, but to know that our intention is to take the same devices that we use on the exterior and add some interest to the paseos. So I think that's it, unless we have any more of those perspectives. That was
Yeah, that's just getting into the sheets. That would just show
okay.
elevations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are you looking for? Well, there's a cross section across through the, there we go.
And so you have some additional textures that you brought in as well.
Yes.
What are the some of the textures at the recess where you've got the deeper openings?
Yeah.
And then you've also got, it looks like this sort of an extended balcony
Yes.
with some wood. Is that what you're using there? Where you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more like a heavy timber type of an application there.
Okay. And then what about is this an applique or is this some sort of tile?
We haven't, probably some sort of a tile.
Okay.
And then what you see up there is the view on the street, and where you see our neighbor to the left, and what we're proposing to the right, and how it kind of goes into the aesthetics of the existing environment, and it adds to it. Do we have the one from the other side or not? Yes, that's the other one from the other side, from the shopping center to the right, and you see what that looks like. It kind of blends in with the rest of the architecture that's surrounding.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Commissioner Costco, do you have any comments or thoughts? I know you weren't here last time.
No, but I have questions. In this meeting, Adam, it's just design only. We don't get into.
It's design only.
Okay. Okay. Can you guys talk about the view corridors that you are designing? So I think I understand them. It's just through the one paseo in the middle.
They're
But
correct.
can you maybe talk about that and its function, how you see it functioning?
The paseo itself is
And specifically this, I have a lot of questions about this.
Sure.
But let's just take the view at first.
Okay.
So the view corridor, how do you see that working with what you have proposed?
Well, I think, the one thing we did do was we kept the buildings in the center of our site, number one, and created a view corridor actually between our building and the retail space. So there's a view corridor out on the right side of our building. We then broke the building into two. We do have a paseo. I don't think it's a public paseo, or is it?
It's not going to be public.
It's not
no,
public,
but it's a visual corridor.
It's a visual corridor out to the ocean also, but it also serves as kind of like a walk space and an extended patios for residents that are there. And then there we go, perfect. And then on the left side, we still have a view corridor between our building and the medical office.
So there's three.
Yes.
Okay.
And then actually there's another one on the other side of the medical office and the adjacency, so there's actually four. Because on either side of the medical.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so there are
Okay.
four of them.
Yeah, three.
And that's visible from the street.
Those are visible.
All from, so the one that may not be as visible from the street is probably the paseo one?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because that's an important part of our design guidelines is that we have those public view corridors
Sure.
and the massiness isn't blocked, so
Yeah.
people on the street can see around the building in effect.
Yes.
Okay,
And in fact, I think with our new architecture, the way we laid it out, we probably have more so than what's existing.
you enhanced it.
Correct.
Okay, great. You guys were talking about maybe using the tiles as to add a decorative kind of element. I think that's a great idea, and I was wondering if you wanted to talk maybe about if you considered adding it to other flat surfaces such as the paseo. That looked really plain to me, and that is your gateway into the complex as from a focal point.
Are you talking in the landscape plane?
No,
or
I'm talking on the building itself. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, and again, we haven't elevated those edges in the paseo yet.
Okay.
But I think the approach that we've taken on the exterior of our building, popping out decks, cantilever deck elements, adding two-story, glazing, adding the tile inserts. I think those are all the devices we are going to use to enhance that paseo, because I think that wants to feel like an old European street.
Right.
As you walk through it, you want to have some extended patios. You may say hi to your neighbor as you walk by. Have some gates that go into their front porch or that lower unit right there. So you want to make that an experience.
Exactly. I think it's a great opportunity. In the drawings that I was looking at, I really didn't see as much as what I thought maybe you should do there.
Yeah, we haven't elevated the paseo, so
Okay.
yeah.
So my thought is just design elements on like the paseo, planters, arches, anywhere where it's a walkway or something like that to add a look, so it's not just stucco and plain, and that there's more there. Yeah. The main thing though that was a small thing. The main thing I wanted to ask you about is on your parking, and the notion of screening the parking stalls themselves. Did you guys consider doing screening on the sides of the larger parking elements?
So covered parking.
Yeah, you've got the solar panels over it, right?
Yes.
And maybe, but the idea would be that you would have some kind of a trellis, maybe with some landscape, with some vines or something to screen those, so they're not just all the way open, just cars. That's what you see, just cars in a parking lot. Because that's part of the design guideline that that encourages in parking that you would have a trellis or some kind of a landscape or screening effect.
I think there's an opportunity to do that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that
if
does
I
be
could
a
just right
landscape
here,
solution
so it would be
for that, putting
here on the sides.
an espalier or something in there that can encourage growing.
We were thinking about from the street is putting plantings up along there to go ahead and kind of screen the parking, but to do it on each one of the carports, one of the things that we run into is that if we make that wall solid, we have to make every one of those end conditions a wider space. So we were going to go ahead and just do more plantings along the street, up along the edge.
You're talking views from the public realm looking into.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity to screen those from the public.
Okay, and maybe you select some of them, maybe where you think they're the most visible, and you don't have to do them all. But
Yeah.
okay,
I mean, I think the front landscape setback that's one of our goals, and the planting is screen those elements as much as we can. That's really beefed up on that front setback.
yeah, no, those are good. I was
Okay.
just mainly on the parking, in the parking lot
Absolutely.
itself.
Absolutely. I think there's an opportunity.
Yeah, and if you guys disagree, please tell me. I'm just throwing out, my.
Well, we don't all have to agree.
Yeah, okay.
I think they're good comments.
Okay. The other thing I wanted, while we're talking parking, is denoting crossings. So, and there might be multiple crossings, and it might not be effective every crossing, but on the major crossing, denoting that instead of just having asphalt all the way around, doing some kind of pavers that indicates this is a crossing, as well as if they're well rounded pavers, it will act as a calming on the driver when they bum, 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 bum over that. It's going to remind them, oh yeah, I'm in a parking lot, I need to slow down. So Jennifer, if you could scroll, like I was thinking mostly, if you could scroll, yeah, here.
Okay.
And then I didn't know where else it would make the most sense, but at least here. And then you could consider if you want to do anything else.
It could make sense at the corners.
Yeah.
It could make sense at where you pointed out. I think it definitely makes sense at our project entry to enhance the paving and, you know, kind of announce arrival.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's opportunities to do that in the landscape around that.
We're already showing some enhanced paving kind of at the entries for.
Yeah, so you could maybe use that same element interior.
Sure.
Okay.
It's not relevant to this, but are you guys going to do EV charging as part of this in
That's
any of
a
your stalls?
good question,
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
That's state law.
We've
the
already
code
included it
requires
within the
it.
parking.
Okay, you did. Okay. All right, that's cool. I just couldn't tell. And just because of the way you guys do the renderings and stuff, I'm assuming everything is all native plants. There's no grass.
No turf.
No turf anywhere,
No turf,
right?
but it'll be primarily low water use.
Yeah,
for
perfect.
natives.
Perfect. Okay.
We do have a couple of artificial turf panels in the south courtyard, but no live.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the pavers is just kind of a pedestrian linkage. So it's linking pedestrian to the parking to the building. It's just that linkage. The other thing would be lighting. And it's hard for me to tell where the lighting elements in this. And so I know I can see, like on the plan, you've got external lighting fixtures on the side of the building, but I wasn't sure if that was all the lighting that you guys were going to do.
We're working with a lighting consultant right now as we speak.
Okay.
So we're going to be coordinating with them to provide lighting. They're providing us with the lumens and everything right now. So they just got started a little bit later in the game on this, but we're working with them to coordinate all the lighting aspects.
Okay.
That's something that we're working with Jennifer and her
So that'll be something maybe we'll see at the actual planning commission meeting. That might be the lighting.
There'll be a visual aesthetics study.
Yeah.
That covers light and glare, but also will incorporate the photometrics lighting plan.
Yeah, lighting's like, right, it's a good and evil, right? I mean, you want to have lighting so at night it's not pitch black and it's safe, so people can make their way safely around your parking and all that.
Sure.
But at the same time, you don't want
A glare.
you don't want glare, you
gotta-
don't want spillage
Right.
into the into the windows, right?
Yes,
So you've got to have it canopied or whatever so that there's no spillage or glare. But I just want to make sure that, just in looking at the drawings, I'm like, I don't know if the lighting's adequate for safety. And then shade, as far as shade trees, as far as maybe in the side and maybe your courtyards, were you thinking in terms of the specimens or the type of trees that one of the elements you're considering is the shading it will provide?
We are. I mean, we're trying to kind of balance between providing shade and also working in these small spaces. But I think as you look around, I think it's also pretty important in the parking lot to try to give as much shade as possible. It's going to be quite shaded from the solar carports, but you can see around if you just look at kind of the scale of the trees, you can see that we've tried to provide some substantial shade trees out in the parking lots. And in the courtyards, they're tight spaces, but we're trying to kind of get a mix of, because of the scale of the buildings, we're trying to get a mix of, some vertical elements, which would be the use of palm trees, and then also supplementing with some larger, kind of mid-story trees, and then some lower, more ornamental type trees, so that you get a nice variation of heights in there.
And therein lies the challenge as well, because of the view corridors. We want to try to maintain that view corridor.
Yeah.
It has to be underneath a canopy, but we still want to provide shade. So that's kind of the challenge.
Yeah.
We're at right now, providing shade, but not blocking any of that.
Perfect. I think those are the right trade-offs that you're looking at.
Absolutely.
I think those are my need, all my prepared
Yeah,
feedback.
it's good input. Thanks for that.
I'm gonna wait till we do our discussion part. I don't have any specific questions at this point, but I certainly will during discussion.
Okay. A question I have, and I think I already know the answer, but the
Can you tell me the answer before you?
That's good, I like it.
Go ahead.
I can try. So the project summary hasn't changed in terms of the density.
No, it has
No,
not
it's
changed.
not.
The
No, it
height.
has not changed.
Okay.
No, actually, the height in the back, actually, we are working on it. And in fact, one thing that we talked about in the past is that we were trying to hide the equipments, and frankly, no one really cared from the top. So we are working on lowering the heights of the in the back end, right? So
Well, we're working on lowering the ridges of the gabled roof elements. I think before we had them fairly high, and they were artificially high. So we're scaling them back, moving the ridges forward. It's creating a little bit more flat roof element behind those roofs, but it lowers, it lowers the ridge. You move that ridge forward and it lowers it. So, and providing some of these smaller elements, it just inherently lowers the roof too. So we're trying to get that roof closer to that 45-foot height limit. Some of these roofs are below the 45, some go a little bit above it, but we're underneath the 50 that we were before.
So we
pulled it
have
down.
worked really hard
Yeah.
since the last time.
Yeah. Really worked hard at getting that down.
Okay. No questions?
No questions per se. Well, I guess I could do one as a question. We've always been talking about massing. And it appears, we've been through this 3 times, and we worked with changing roof lines and decorating it and putting elements on it with no true change in massing. So I'm assuming that the owner and the project team are avoiding any loss of units, obviously.
I think that,
And
yes, yeah.
I think you're gonna stick with that position.
I believe the owner is, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yes,
I
yeah.
I understand
Okay.
Yes, for that.
the game that's played there. So that's an, but we'll do that during discussion.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Now, we understand, you guys are the design team. You have your marching orders and your program. We've expressed our concerns about the program. But as far as what you guys are doing, we've seen steady improvement consistently, each time. I think Commissioner Cosgrove has some good input in terms of how that can still be, worked on. But, we've always noted, and I think it goes to say this time as well, that some of the things that you're proposing, eliminating some of the sort of rigid symmetry, considering the vertical and the horizontal in terms of breaking down the massing. The biggest concern still is just that it's overall, it's just a lot of building on this site. And it doesn't really help, I don't think, for us to keep pounding on that to you guys. That's going to be a developer consideration, right? I mean, I would love to have seen a project that's within the zoning regulations. I mean, that's normally what I have to do when I design a project. Says
That's why I asked Adam at the
says
beginning.
50%,
Is it just the
50%
design?
coverage. Okay, let's max it out 50%. It says 45-foot height limit on the roofs. Okay, let's hit 45. It says 3 stories allowed. Let's go 3. Right. Let's still have the kind of quality architecture that we're looking for. So, you guys have achieved, I think, good quality architecture. You've looked at the edges. You've looked at the sort of pedestrian element of the project. And I think given some of the input from Commissioner Cosgrove, there's some additional refinement that can be done.
Sure.
In terms of the, we're just jumping in here on discussion, but in terms of, the quality of the architecture and the character I think you guys have achieved that. You know?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just, again, it's overall, this is your program, you have to get 250 units, how are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
And you guys have done the best you can, I think, in terms of accomplishing. So it's gonna come down to, in terms, trying to get everything that's required on the approvals. Can it really be done, with these kinds of exceptions
Yeah.
to the zoning regulations? I don't think it can. I don't think, we can certainly recommend to the planning commission, this is the architecture's good. I mean, we like the detailing, we like the overall scale, we like the sort of proportion of Spanish Revival elements that you've chosen to use. It's just too much of it. That's not maybe a very helpful response, but that's kind of, I haven't changed as far as the way I feel about that.
Sure.
And we have a lot of new projects recently in surrounding cities, like we did in Miguel, Dana Point. Those are two notable locations where I think that people have kind of gotten afraid of what our city of San Clemente, the Spanish village by the sea, could look like, in terms of that precedent. So that's what you're going to be up against, and there's not much you can do about that. But in terms of, I like Commissioner Cosgrove's input. I think those are great things to consider. Lighting is always huge.
Yeah.
And it is a balance, right? How can you shield the lighting, the artificial lighting, and still provide the kind of safety and security that you need? And also, lighting is a great tool to create a sort of a character and vibe, within the development. So I think there's some options for you there. Also, that paseo, as you call it, in the center. Love to see what that's going to look like. It's still, at least in plan view.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. In plan view, it looks pretty flat, but I know that there's some devices, as you call them, that you can use. And I like what I see on the elevations, and just the shading you can see, helps with those elevations. And you've got a lot of plant materials called out, which are kind of all the usual suspects. The Melaleucas and what else? I mean, just everything that we see works around here, grows well. As long as it isn't just sort of a hodgepodge, because you haven't called out exactly. I think it shows pretty well where everything goes on the landscape plan. What was that?
The last sheet.
Like the last sheet. Landscape's always in the back.
Should be in the front, they're prettier.
It should, yeah. But when you see Italian cypress, mixed with carrot wood trees, for instance, that's a little bit of a stretch. But I can see where, I see the fruitless olives and the magnolias. I think those are very compatible. I think, you just need to sort of narrow the palette here a little bit. Even though it's a large piece of property, it's like you just kind of threw everything on here. So and I assume you're going to kind of clean that up and refine that.
I think we'll refine it some, and we're in the process of kind of refining the shrub palette and ground cover to incorporate more natives in there.
Okay.
So we'll have more representative shrub and ground cover palette on our next submittal.
Okay. And there's a mix, it looks like, of evergreen and deciduous in here.
That's correct.
Some of these are pretty messy trees. I wouldn't want them near my particular unit. Like the pepper tree, and but I love the trees. I love magnolias are pretty clean, but it looks like you have along the edges the podocarpus, which is kind of a normal solution to get a solid mass.
Right, we're trying to get some evergreen screening on those boundaries.
Okay. Okay. So those are my comments, and I don't have a lot other than I really like the direction in terms of the way you guys have broken down the massing.
Well, thank you for your directions too. I mean, we've had 2 directions so far since we've been here. and I feel like it's just refined and it's gotten better over time. And I think it's just continuing to evolve. And one thing that you talk about at the sale, frankly, if you go to Europe, I mean, a lot of those paseos are flat for the most part, but they do over time evolve and become more sort of pedestrian friendly. So I think we can try to add more of those elements to it, to make it more so.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just materials. You get some textures
Sure.
in there and some vines that can sort of, cling to that a little bit if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah, just break it up a little bit and make it, slow it down rather than just a hallway that just goes straight down.
Right. Okay. Again, I don't need to beat I don't know, I don't like that term, beat the dead horse, but
It's effective.
because I would never do that.
It's a good
But
visual.
this thing's like, it's 60%, the density is 60% higher than what the zoning allows for, and 25% taller if you go from 3 to 4 stories. And it just, I think it handicaps you in terms of really making it a
Let's save that
nice.
for discussion. We can close the questions to the applicant and then open up for public comment.
Yeah, public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to?
I just have one, it's too big for the area. I could say that for a while.
In what way?
Just too dense, I mean, too big, too massive. Just, I've looked at the apartments at Short Cliffs, that's 150 units, and it's huge, and it's like hidden underneath the freeway overpass. This just seems like it doesn't fit. It's just too big.
Yeah. So you think in terms of the, Spanish Village by the Sea, which is kind of a vague description of our city, but I think there's a lot in that in terms of the perception.
That part, it looks pretty. I mean, as a big unit, but you can't put lipstick on a pig. Maybe that's a bad thing to say, but to me, that's what you're trying to do, right? So that's my opinion.
Okay. Anyone else?
Larry
Culbertson. I like everything that I've heard said today. Everybody was right on. Commissioner Housgrove, particularly about the solar carports out in front, those need to be screened. Those are pretty hideous. But even more to the point, your comments that the massing hasn't really come down enough. I appreciate the fact they brought it down a lot, but not enough yet. I'd like to make a comment about the staff report. Attachment 1, Table 4, relevant general GP policies. It requires that the scale and massing be compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. The building would be, the staff's argument is the building would be larger than some buildings on nearby parcels. However, it is similar in scale to nearby office buildings across the street to the south. I think that's false. When you look up and down the street, it's predominantly 1, 2, 3 stories. There are a couple that are high, but the vast majority are not that big. So I would like staff to reconsider that before it goes on, because that's going to have an influence on the planning commission. The height limitations, the top plate 37 feet, 43 requested, that's 17% higher. That's an awful big exception. Top of the roof, 45 feet. I thought I heard the applicant say something about we're staying under 50. Yes, apparently it's 59.6. Is that different than that now? Is it less than 59.6?
I don't believe, no, I think that's for like an elevator overrun, but not for the majority of our building.
And then, as was stated, the 3 stories are going to go 4. I think that's 33% more. It's just too big. I think when all the citizens in the neighborhood find out about this, they're going to be tar and feathers. That's about all I have. If you've seen Raya's Paradise down at the south end of town, if you were in on that part, passing that, it's not that big. It's beautiful. They're doing well. But you could, it doesn't have to be that big to make money. That's why thank you.
Okay. Nope. All right. So that's it for public Comment, why don't we open up a discussion?
Okay. I'll jump in. Adam, I know we're just dealing with what our requirements are here, but we're in a tough spot. We've got a project in front of us that, if we're asked to review it, doesn't meet the existing zoning, so there's going to be a zone change to CC4. The special uses for being a senior project indicate if the CC4's height were below 45, you could go 45 for the height. So that one doesn't really apply since it's unnecessary, since we're in a zone now that says 45 feet. As planning commissioners, we look at a project and it has to be, we look at it anonymously. It doesn't matter who the applicant is. We can't take that into consideration. We're just looking at a land use issue and how things work. So we've got a project here in front of us that we're reviewing aesthetically, and we've talked about that a little bit already. But as far as the standards go, when we review it at the next level, we're going to be asked to make findings. Does it meet the zoning? No. They're asking for, I don't know if it's going to be an exception or if it's going to be a variance, whatever it is. I'm not sure we actually have the ability to go above 45. That's something we need to talk about, and we've got the planning session coming on the 31st. 31st. Jennifer, are you going to be presenting that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just if
Go ahead.
I may, if there was nothing in our code that would allow for a request being made, staff would have a difficult time presenting that to any body for review. So even if they're requesting an exception to height requirements, there would be a path forward for that, which would require a if it did require a permit, that would be something that would be under the planning commission's purview.
Jennifer, can you pull up the 17.24.110, number 4 of the municipal code online? Can we do that? I'm being technical here, only that to do our aesthetic review, I got to know what we're reviewing.
Sure.
You said 17.24?
Change it backwards. Yeah, 17.24.110. And scroll down, okay, right there. The whole reason is to discourage excessive massing structures, the establishment of story limit, for mixed use and non-residential zones, the exemption of subterranean garages. So I haven't heard anything presented to us that would encourage having a more massive building than what is allowed by this zone.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be presented that here at the DRSC. That would be presented at Planning Commission.
Because, well,
And to prepare for that, you'd want to look at the senior housing project section that talks about the findings that have to be made to provide.
I did.
Okay.
I did. And to review this aesthetically, then, since I don't know why we can have a 4th floor, nobody's justified it yet. The findings to make it Spanish colonial revival and the massing, I can't make. Unless they can find a justification for being higher. The downslope side of the property, yeah, there's a way to justify on a sloping site getting a lower unit underneath. I can see that being done, but to have a standalone 4-story building that exceeds the height limit, and trying to justify the guidelines, does it exceed the massing? Does it meet all those? It's a very difficult thing to do. And I think we've pushed and shoved that enough here that, I think we're gonna say, you move it along. But I can't say it meets the guidelines unless there's a justification for doing it in front of us. We've never done that before because usually we have the zone already done and we know all that and whatnot. I think you've done a great job with the program you were given. And I like what's been done. But when we get to the findings we have to make, in fact, it's anonymous. So whatever discussions have gone on outside this room make no difference at all in making the land use decision. We tried to give you a lead on reducing the massing, and I can see that you're bound to work to that program. So there's a risk, but I think this is going to be discussed at the study session. And I don't know what the format's going to be.
The format's going to be informational in nature. There may be questions and answers, but there will not be a discussion that gets into whether a discussion that results in any type of determinations.
Oh yeah, no, we can't make a determination till a public hearing.
Yeah, the point of the study session is that this project is complex. There's a lot going on here, and to save future meetings from being very long, present a lot of this information that can be addressed in a more streamlined fashion up front. And that way, when it does come to a public hearing, we're getting into more of the actual issues at hand related to things like land use.
So to encourage in your presentations to look at what findings we have to make and find out a way that it can be justified to make them.
Okay.
I mean, that's really where I'm going. Because
Yeah.
on some of these, I look at them and I go, I don't think we're there yet on making all those findings. But for the downslope site, Jennifer, are we averaging the height limit on that part of the lot? Because determining the finished grade that we're measuring from, it gets a little dicey and wordy in the code. And has engineering all been satisfied with where they're taking their measurements from?
Yes, and the applicant is working on providing that finalized roof diagram that shows what the average height is across the entire.
Yeah, we can do make sure it's on a section of where that height is taken from.
Yes.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think, if I can just jump in.
Yeah, please.
Really, it's normally, we look at these and say, okay, it's reasonable to have, small exceptions. And then we look at what you're presenting here, and the density allowed by code would be 143,000 square feet. And this project is proposing 231,000 square feet. I mean, it's a huge exception. So, to me, that really needs to be justified. I mean,
I
it's,
think
that's not-
we have to clarify the density prescribed for a senior residential is 45 dwelling units per acre, which we are under that cap. The FAR is probably what you're referring to, the 0.5 FAR.
yeah, I mean, it's in the project summary.
Yeah, because
So it says allowed versus proposed.
FAR is really a better way of looking at a mixed use or a commercial project, but the residential density is probably a better way of looking at the senior housing. So I know that's complex on how we have to analyze the project as a whole, but the FAR, it seems like 0.5 it's hard to achieve that while trying to get 45 dwelling units per acre as well.
But they're all part of it. That's the thing. I mean, that's why it's tough. It's not easy to design a project that meets the FAR and the dwelling unit. I mean, sometimes you can't do it, even if it's allowed.
Yeah, that's
So-
sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's the consideration. And, you know, again, 3-story, and even if it's 3 stories allowed, for instance, then I would see it would be 2s and 3s, right? Not all 3. But in this case, it's primarily 3. I mean, there are some 2-story elements, but most of the units, you know, the buildings that have units are 3 and 4. And a lot of them are 4. I mean, a large percentage. So again, we look at it as it's a huge exception. It's not a minor exception. And I haven't been here that long. I've been here a year doing this. But the times when we have promoted or approved exceptions, it's been a minimum thing where it's like, okay, it's reasonable. In this case, it's a massive request.
Yeah.
That's the way we see it.
And when I was saying, trying to make the findings, you know, if some of those 3-story elements might not have been there, and then they put a few on a 4th story, you can see a trade-off there. But like he says, it's a solid 3-story everywhere, and it's for the whole buildings. The ones that go down, I don't think the public's going to notice that height quite as much, even though it's pulled back a little bit. That 4th story on the one building,
On the right.
yeah, on the right is the one
Correct.
with the
Right,
stuff
right,
underneath.
yeah, correct.
That's something we run into all the time.
Well, on the project adjacent to us.
But, you know, that's a 4-story building the whole way, everything. So there's been no trade-off to the city whatsoever, or to the guidelines that would justify, you know, a little here, a little there, you know. But I think we've done enough, as much as we can here. You know, it moves along with those comments from us.
Yeah, I mean, we can move it along the planning commission. You know, even as you look at it, a big part of the Spanish colonial revival architecture are the tile roofs. And these roofs with the 3- and 4-story massing become a sort of a hat on the buildings instead of, you know, sort of integrated into the architecture. Where in some cases you see a broad kind of shed roof. And there's some exceptions, you know, in the back, I think you do see that roof. But that's the way, and it's a pretty telling view right here. You know, this is sort of a bird's eye view. But from the street level, pedestrian level, and most people driving, you're just going to see the stucco, you know, for the most part. Those are like mansard roofs, a lot of them. So, again, you know, we're not faulting you guys. You were given a program. You did a good job with it. But the program, it's a tough sell. That's going to be the hard part.
But and we appreciate you coming in 3 times to go over this.
I appreciate your input.
And, you know, we indicated that, you know, if you took all the windows off and all, it's the philosophy of Spanish colonial revival. It's supposed to be sculptural. We've got no sculpting here. We've got giant blocks that have been decorated. And that's all you can do with it to get that density.
That may be a little extreme. But,
No.
yeah, no.
But, I mean, I really like the fact the roofs have been varied. I don't like big, long fascias that you were able to eliminate and cut up. That's great. I think it's a great concept for the city to get senior housing, and that's a good location for it. But aesthetically, as far as the guidelines go, I got to make those findings. Now, the one down the hill, the new one going on Shortcliff, it didn't have to be Spanish colonial revival. They were not obligated to do that. They opted knowing that's going to be kind of an arrival point for visiting golfers and whatnot coming in, seeing the senior project. And they chose to do it, and they did a pretty good job with it. If you see the framing, it's broken up and whatnot. So what we're doing here needs to far exceed, not far exceed, needs to probably exceed that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have got the skill to do a project that would be approvable here within these guidelines. But I don't think, again, and we've stated this each time, I don't think it's possible with the massing and the density that's being proposed to do a project. I don't think I can do it.
And
I don't know how
we know
it
the reality of the situation is we've got this, city council will be the final one to make the decision. They don't have to make the findings that we have to make. We're volunteer appointed commissioners. So we do it under our title, and they can do what is under their title.
And again, we're just
Their
going to be
authority.
recommending
That's
to the
right.
city
Yeah,
council.
we
We're not
can't make
making-
zone changes.
We're not going to be making the approval.
But at this point, just to clarify, this is design review committee for today,
Mhm.
right? And then the next step is
Planning commission.
correct?
And that,
So
the
that's
discussions there
what
will
the
be
discussion-
zone change, will be.
Yes.
Parking,
Parking.
all that
And
stuff.
the history behind this obviously will come to, I'm assuming come before, where basically this was spot zoned, where it actually was reduced.
Actually, at the planning commission, we shouldn't even get into that, should we?
Because we're actually asking for zone change in general plan amendment that actually was adopted with this housing amendment last year. And we are actually, I think, in many ways, are we not coming in within the envelope that was provided within the housing element last year?
It was not adopted with the housing element. It was considered
Yes.
as a housing site,
Sure.
consistent with that.
Yes,
Yes.
so I mean, we were working within, trying to work within that envelope.
Yeah.
And the zone change is probably the least of your problems here. You know, I mean, I don't think that
No, the housing
Housing.
next door to it is CC4. It's in the, what is it, it's in the medical overlay.
No,
Medical overlays on the other side of the freeway.
no, this one was actually, it literally was consistent with surrounding uses.
Okay.
And
So,
this was.
so the zone change,
is
and
to
even if
make
it was CC4 now,
You
we're
know,
complying with that.
they want to make this CC4 to allow residential uses.
Yep.
It was regional medical facilities. It is regional medical facilities. That's the zone change that's being
Okay.
presented. The legalities of how we got here are not going to be. Well, the applicants are free to discuss whatever they want. The legalities of how we got to this point right now are not the purview of the planning
No,
commission.
I agree 1,000%. And
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to clarify what we're discussing here versus, planning commission
Yeah,
versus.
so
city
we can
council.
assume it's CC4 right now.
Yeah.
And say, okay,
Yeah, essentially
because
that's.
it meets CC4.
That's, yes. Essentially, right now, the applicants are proposing a 4-story building, and the design review subcommittee is saying, if this is what you're proposing, this is what we recommend
Sure.
to get it as close to the design guidelines as possible.
Exactly.
The use, the density, the zone change, all of those items, that will come under the purview of the planning commission as a whole. At this point in time, you've gotten, I think some pretty good direction on
Sure,
on where
sure,
the design of the
absolutely.
subcommittee is as far as the architecture is
So one
concerned.
compliment shop that you've done.
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully we're clear.
They've got a good group working for them, and hopefully they'll let you work.
From here,
Yeah, we don't. When your hands are tied, that's
it's probably
that
better.
makes it tough.
I'm just a dumb
So-
architect.
Typically, in
So
the
are we.
design review
we
subcommittee,
can relate.
the design review members will provide their assessment and any recommendations that they would that they think would help the applicants moving forward. In this case, it would be really nice, especially with the study session for next week, is having the design review subcommittee weigh in on their level of support for the project moving forward in terms of architecture. If there's, we've heard your comments, and when we go through the minutes, we'll incorporate all of those. But I want to say that there are, and if I'm wrong, clarify. If I'm right, a simple agreement would be fine. It sounds to me like at this point, all of the recommendations that could be provided to the applicants by the design review subcommittee have been made. No, you've made the recommendations. Whether they've incorporated them is a different story. But there are still lingering concerns about the project's mass and scale, general design from the design review subcommittee. But there are not very many additional recommendations that could be given to the applicants. So in the vein that they've received all the information that they need, the design review subcommittee is comfortable moving the project forward to the full, I'll call it to the full planning commission, knowing that the next week it's going to be a planning commission, city council.
I would only tend to agree with that to the extent that given the program, we've provided feedback, we've provided input.
Yeah.
But a project that falls within the guidelines in terms of height and density is a whole different project.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be potentially completely different different feedback for a project that we felt fit within the guidelines. So that would be sort of the overarching.
Right. So what I would say is the design guidelines themselves actually do not reference development standards. Those are two
They
different
reference
things.
massing, and
They do reference massing. So based on the size of the lot and based on the proposal, you can still make a determination whether or not it's within the zoning ordinance development standards, whether the massing is it's appropriate for the site, whether it's compatible with the neighboring properties.
Yeah, there's an alignment there.
Yeah.
I think that obviously the 3 stories is probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Which is, look, we want a more residential feel, and a Spanish village feel, and
yeah, well, I think what Adam's saying is that I'm not sure I agree with you totally on that one, that we do take into consider the mass because we do review exceptions. And that is one of our duties. And if we want to say it that way, I'm not inclined to give an exception at this point unless the architecture is reduced to mass.
That makes perfect sense. I guess what I'm saying is that if the design review subcommittee looked at a project that it included an architectural permit and a zone change or some type of exception from existing zoning standards, by that logic, they would never receive any full support from the design review subcommittee simply because it doesn't meet the current findings. It doesn't meet the current standards. Whereas then if it went to the planning commission and the planning commission approved that exception or that zone change,
Well, typically we don't normally process projects with a zone change. I think I've only seen 2.
because this is an applicant initiated one. So I just want to make it clear for the record where the design review subcommittee is. We don't want to misquote
No, we don't.
the level of support for this project in future staff reports. So that's why I'm saying that the subcommittee is comfortable with this moving forward with the understanding that the applicants have received all of the recommendations that the design review subcommittee has to offer for this project to be improved, but noting that the project as it currently is in front of you has not incorporated
them all.
all of those recommendations.
yeah, that's fair.
Does that work? Okay.
I just have a kind of a different tact question. maybe for staff. And I should have brought my copy of the design guidelines highlighted with the certain district that this falls in. But I seem to recall reading something that it's highly encouraged to not have any interior corridors in this district. I don't know if maybe I read that wrong or whatever, but that's just something I'm going to go back and look at again. Because to me that is fundamentally, if that's the case, no internal corridors, I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
That wouldn't be in the design guidelines.
I thought there was something about it with the specifics of this district that it does encourage or discourage internal corridors.
It might be encouraged. This is an automobile-oriented
That's right.
district.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that.
And so it does talk about when you are subdividing that you want to have those internal, more minor corridors compared to the main street.
Yeah.
In this particular case, they're not creating
Talking about roads or?
No, I was talking about just hallways. That this thing is so big, but when I was reading, I was just getting confused about, because of that district that is in, should these buildings be actually separated out so that everything is open? There's no internal corridors at all. And maybe I was misreading it. And maybe it is vehicular, but I thought it was to the building itself, the orientation of the building.
Okay, so we can both go back and check.
Okay, yeah. I would, the only thing I think that you guys need to appreciate here is that we're trying to just stay in our lane, design.
Absolutely.
But there's a whole lot more going on with this project, and we're just trying to give you guys a heads up.
Absolutely.
It's coming.
Completely.
There's going to be a lot of feedback for you guys that has nothing to do with the prettiness of it.
That's all I've received my entire career.
Okay.
Feedback.
Okay. Okay.
Hopefully it's constructive. Yeah, we're trying to be constructive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
No, we get that.
Yeah, your time
is.
is, you're trying to add to the community. We want to help you do it
Yeah,
the
I
right
think
way.
we've been super clear the whole time. And, we're not against a senior housing project here. So, we got that going for you. That's why the zone change maybe is probably the easiest part of it. Okay?
Yeah.
Any other comments?
No, just compliment the project team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys put in a lot of effort. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on the 31st.
Will do. All right, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any-
Okay, moving on. Any new business? Oh, it says none.
Let's do. When do you head out of town?
I headed out of town on September the 15th, Thursday.
September 15th. So you'll be around for the special session.
That's mine.
Yes.
Here at 31st.
Yes. And unless we're having a meeting on the 14th, that's why otherwise I'd leave earlier. I'm trying to be here for as much as I can.
If that works.
We do have the 14th. That's the first DRSC meeting of September.
Yeah.
Okay,
The 14th?
Yeah.
And you guys have stuff for it,
We
right?
do have an alternate.
Okay.
We have an
We
alternate.
do have an alternate, yes.
Scott, yeah, so
Sit in
after the
for you while
14th,
you're
we'll
gone.
need to have Scott come because I'm going to be gone.
It's a whole month.
What's that?
It's a whole month.
Yeah. And my wife was talking about actually adding on an extra week. It's because our
That's
kids
what
are
our
getting
wives
married
do.
in Kentucky.
Oh,
This is
Kentucky.
part of why I had to
We thought it
do
was
the
Tennessee.
withdrawal from the council because my family's just like, no, you're coming. This is happening. And I'm like, you're right. So yeah, I have to be gone even maybe longer. And I don't even know if you guys are at that. Maybe I should have a separate conversation with Adam about that. She'd like me to be gone an extra week so we can watch the kids' dogs while they're on their honeymoon.
Well, I mean, Scott,
I know. That's my life.
I've been there. No,
I'm sorry. This is my life right now.
Sounds familiar.
so that's why what the alternate.
That's why we have an alternate.
Yeah.
We are trying to put, I will tell you, the next two DRSC meetings, I will say, I believe that they're gonna have a number of items on them. We're starting to really get the wheels cranking
Good.
over in planning, so, the agendas of yesterday will be back, will come back to
Yeah.
life.
It's just a bad time because we've got a lot of stuff coming to a head in, you know, and I watched the council put pressure on you guys, get this stuff through, you know, and it's like, it's all
Yeah, I haven't
coming in
noticed.
September.
It never ends.
I haven't noticed
This-
any of
this-
that pressure.
It never changes.
Okay, so I'm not gonna feel bad. I just,
Yeah, September. You know what? It's fine. The next few months are usually are a bit calmer. The summer's over. This has been a very hectic summer. Once people get back into school and do all that kind of stuff, then
Yeah.
you know, things get a little calmer. Towards the end of the year, we start to get a lot more applications. Spring, early summer, that's where people really start coming in with their projects.
okay.
So hopefully we're going to be clearing out a number of things coming up.
Tourism.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to be gone just for a couple weeks in October, but you're going to be back in October.
Late October. I might miss all of October's meetings. Let me just see. I was gonna talk to Adam about
think
that,
we're talking-
if I would
So
be
why don't
allowed to
we,
miss
at the
it.
next meeting, and I'm going to be taking over as the secretary for the DRSC. At the next meeting, let me just put on the agenda an item about upcoming schedules, and then if there are certain, and I'll have the TFA as well, because I'm working with each planner to like really try to plan out their projects, and so we can kind of figure out what's going to be on what schedules. Let's go over what we have on the schedule now, and if there's meetings that you just know we're not going to have enough people for, we can just cancel them ahead of time so that we're aware of.
Okay.
And it's seldom if ever received.
Ideally for me, I know I'm gonna
So you're
miss,
start training.
I know I'm gonna be here for the
No more or
7th, but I'll miss the 21st, I'm gonna miss the 5th. Ideally,
Okay.
my wife wants me to miss this one too.
Planning
Wait,
Commission,
We used to
Yeah.
go to Europe. every year.
DRSC, Planning
And
Commission,
then, the
DRSC,
year before COVID, and of course with COVID.
Planning Commission.
Right, so I'm gonna miss,
We're still
I'm
trying
gonna
to
miss
get
this
to
one,
the-
this one, this one.
Did you
this
send
one.
an email about this?
I did, but now my wife said, oh, you really shut it.
So we'll make it-
You should have
we'll
said
make
you
it
cannot
better.
make the 19th too. Is that gonna be okay if I miss 3
Yeah, we've
planning
always-
commission meetings?
Well, my wife especially is always wanting to do that.
I think as long as they're, there's
We like to go on the shoulder
it's codified.
season.
That I
Because we
can't
got
miss
married
it.
in
No,
October.
it's not that you
Okay.
can't. It's just
That's
that we need to have
history.
notice or there's
Month.
something about it.
Gets a little
I'll
cold
make
there.
sure that you have the information.
Okay,
Alright,
I'll
it
resend
can,
it
it can,
because
but
I'll
usually
update
it's
it that
nice.
I'm gonna miss the
And the
19th.
tra- You know, it's crowded.
Okay,
apparently,
that'll
for-
just make it better so
during the
that
summer.
I can do all
It's
my
like
family
really
obligations,
So we
which
like
is
to
kind of was my,
the wildness.
Yeah. Okay. So
We can adjourn.
no.
are we ready?
Well, we have, so there's no old business? Any oral or written communication, Adam, that came in?
There is not.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
You want to do that?
Sure, yeah, let's see here. So it's gonna be to the, when are we adjourning to?
August 3rd, right here.
Oh, yeah, okay, so I will move we adjourn to the joint council commission committee to be held on August 30th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Municipal Golf Course Banquet Room.
Okay,
I'll second that.
All right. Seconded, and
All in
vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Cosgrove
Aye.
and Commissioner Camp is also an aye.